pyro, music, woo, high-tech stuff. It's the Bankster DFS NFL Sunday DFS Blitz Week 10. Doug Shane here with Michael Gutta Darrow, the big Gutta, coming in, doing the thing, getting you ready for your lineups, GPP lineups, cash game lineups, inactives. Please make sure you come and drop questions. Check us out at banksterdfs.com. It is a fantasy community for the casual fantasy player. $3.99 a week gets you access to everything that we do. And I don't know if it's public knowledge yet, so I'm not going to call anyone out specifically, but we did have a member of Team Bankster last night pop 20 grand on a $15 entry in NHL. NHL's been on fire lately. So while we do cater to casual players, we make some big money. Things have been going really well. All the sports, NBA's hitting, college football hits hard, MMA, NASCAR, PGA, college basketball, all of it. We do it all. We do it all. And a big shout out to John Kay, too, for holding down MLB for the last month when Gutta and I decided all we cared about was football. We don't want to do baseball anymore. So, good times, good stuff. That's at BanksterDFS.com. That's us. Gutta, last week you mentioned this on the in the Slack chat earlier today. I was almost inactive due to my 24 hours after my booster shot, and I felt like shit, and it was awful. Back strong this week. I don't know if this is like the way it is for you, but if I ever go gambling or whatever it is, and I'm in a crappy mood, I always do awful. And last week, I felt like garbage. I was barely awake for the games. Like I felt like just total dog poo. And I had like my lowest score of the year. I think I had 68 points in cash, lost everything, and I'm in a crappy mood. And it turned out that way for football too. Now today, I'm in a great mood. I feel good. Everything's wonderful. I'm hoping that turns us around, and we're in a really good spot. How is Gutta this week?
Good. I'm tired. It's been the slate's taken a lot of energy out of me. Not in a bad way, but there was a lot of injury. I mean, when I first started writing on Thursday, there was so much injury and COVID back and forth that we didn't know who was in, who was out. So there were a lot of variables earlier, and then the news kept coming. And then, we had Roethlisberger last night, and two of the Bills' defensive starters are out. So there's things that are opening up and changing, and it's been very much on the fly. And of course, the biggest thing this week has been, was Chris Godwin playing, which has been, huge. And then obviously the two free square running backs and what we do with those guys and where that goes for this as well.
I hate free square weeks. It throws everything off. I mean, one free square is fine, but I hate like two free squares and value here, and I don't like it. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of that. And yeah, the updates, you and I, when we updated our articles, we updated in red. And I swear with both of our articles, this is your GPP article, my cash article, there's more red than black. Like it is absolutely ridiculous. But with all the value and all the high-end guys and all the everything that's out there, like I'll pull up the cash game pool. It's a pretty condensed pool. Yet for some reason, I'm personally, listen, I'm going full disclosure here. I like to go full disclosure. I'm not playing cash this week. I think for me, this is a tournament week personally. I think there are too many variables at play. I don't like a double free square week. So for me, I'm not playing cash. I have a cash lineup that for some reason I can't. I withdrew all my entries from cash this week, but there's a couple that DraftKings won't let me withdraw. So I'm a little pissed off about that. So I'm in for like $7 in cash. So I don't really care there. But like, I'm just not putting my normal investment in cash. I'm going straight tournament this week because if I feel uncomfortable, I don't play it, which is weird. We were talking off the air. Like it's a pretty condensed pool of players. We kind of know where to go with cash. And I know you have some guys that you're using that aren't in my pool, and we can edit the pool as we go along, if need be, and we can talk about it. But like, there aren't a ton of choices, but I think you have to be pretty perfect this week, right? Because I think at running back, you're going to have those value guys, Ingram and Johnson are going to be. You were mentioning 70%, and I think that's right. And I think that's going to bring Devontae Adams up over 70%, and that scares me in cash. I don't like when you have to be perfect. So we'll see where we break down with the cash pool as we go. As always, we'll break it down leading up to inactives at 11:30, and then we'll talk GPPs, and Gutta and I will freak out when some random guy is inactive, and we change all of our lineups. And also, we're here to answer your questions. If you are here hanging out, thank you so much for watching. Please put your questions in the chat box. We love to answer your questions. We will definitely go off script if need be. We like doing that. So let's look at the quarterback position. I think you and I are differing a little bit. Similar philosophy, differing results this week. We both agree spending up a little bit at quarterback is the way to go this week. I'm leaning more towards Tom Brady. I just think his 4 more touchdowns in 5 of 8 games this year. I just think for a non-running quarterback, he's got as much upside and as high of a floor as anyone. I know you're more into Dak Prescott. I think you like the savings and, great matchup. And even last week when Dak played like garbage, he still had 18 points. He's been throwing a ton of touchdowns. I was into Carson Wentz earlier in the week. Jacksonville is actually much worse against the pass than they are the run. And I think a lot of people are going to be leaning more towards Jonathan Taylor. And I think that leaves Wentz as a really interesting, sneaky option.
Yeah.
Heineke on the other side of the Tampa Bay Washington game because he's got that mobility and he's going to put up some volume. And Tampa Bay's terrible against the pass. And then I think Mason Rudolph comes into play now simply because he's at 4,100. If he was 45 even or more, I might not be interested. But it's a great matchup against Detroit. He's done it before in the NFL at $4,100. You can do a lot with your lineup. That's $3,500 cheaper than Brady. You can do a lot with your lineup with Mason Rudolph in there. So talk to me about why you prefer Dak over Brady on the high end, and then if you think it's viable to spend down to a Rudolph type player.
So my Dak preference really is it's really more of the savings, to be perfectly honest. I think Brady and Dak are in very similar situations. Brady is obviously going to pass more, but I also think there's a little bit more of the risk in the Tampa game of it being like 21 or 28 nothing, and Brady hasn't quite gotten there yet. Tampa runs a little more, and it just kind of gets away from you, where I think the Cowboy game, I think the Falcons are playing better than Washington is, and Atlanta has a better chance of keeping up with the scoring and actually keeping it closer, where Dallas has to continue to play their offense. And and I think with the savings, it gives you a little bit more flexibility as well. And I mean, at this point, Dak is not really a running quarterback anymore. He's going to move to avoid, a sack. Yeah, maybe he'll get a 20-yard scramble, but this is not the Dak that we saw earlier, last year before he got hurt, or even back in 2019, where you can kind of pencil him in for at least 40, rushing yards and giving you an extra advantage. He's not there anymore. So they're kind of similar from that standpoint, I would say. I just think there's a little bit better of a route for Dak than there is Brady. But honestly, I think both are extremely viable. Whichever way you go, I don't think it's a wrong decision. When I kind of get into the point of such a similar, potential upside and an outcome or output from a game, I'll take the savings, all things being equal.
Any argument to be made to spending down a quarterback with either a Heineke or all the way down to a Rudolph? Do you see an avenue where that makes sense, or is it just smarter to ride the cheap chalk at running back? And, because instead of going like 2 value running backs, maybe you spend down to Rudolph and you pivot off into like a Zeke Elliott or even a McCaffrey, even though he's not going to be widely rostered. You put him in your lineup. Does that make sense, or is it smarter to just, eat the chalk at running back and use those savings to spend up at quarterback?
I'd rather take the savings at running back, but I mean, maybe I'm a little PTSD from Jordan Love last week. I mean, I know Rudolph's a different situation at home and against Detroit, and Rudolph has a handful of starts throughout his career and all that. I mean, Rudolph obviously is not really very good that he hasn't convinced the Steelers that he's their quarterback of the future. I mean, he's a backup. Let's call it what it is. This could definitely be a game where, you see 16 points from Rudolph and it's like, man, we should have used them in cash, but I don't want to take that risk with where we do have the savings from the running back. Cause also too, there's a good chance that one of Johnson or Ingram busts this week. It's just kind of how it goes, how it happens, what's going to happen. But I think there's differentiation between, well, if they bust, are they going to give you 6 points and you're really screwed? Or does the bust mean, well, they didn't help you win a GPP, but they still got you between 10 and 12 points, which at $4,500 or $4,700, that's okay in a cash game avenue. Again, it's not winning you your cash game, but if Mark Ingram gives you 10 points at $4,500, it's not the worst thing in the world.
You're not,
whereas if you're using Mason Rudolph and he only gives you 12 because Pittsburgh handles the game really easily and he didn't have to pass that much. Well, 12 points from your quarterback, granted it's 3x on his price, that's not doing a lot for you either, because
in order for that to pay off, you need whoever you spend up on over from Ingram. So like if Zeke comes in, let's say you go with Rudolph and Zeke, right? And Rudolph gives you 12. But Zeke only gives you 13, 14, you're done. Like you're absolutely close, because Zeke's going to need to get you 25 at that point.
Yeah, because that becomes the other thing then too. If you go like in that scenario, the pricing would work. So you say, all right, well now it's not going to be a Dak day, it's going to be a Zeke day. Well, now you're really given that 2v2, and it becomes way more difficult as well.
Absolutely. And I think, part of it too, you mentioned the bust potential of the two running backs. And you're right. If one of them busts, and by bust, we don't mean bust for a big game. We mean bust as in sucks. And you pick the wrong one, you've double screwed yourself. So by putting them both in your lineup, you're almost hedging against the bust. So if one does well, one does poorly, combined, if they're at 70%, everyone has them, and you've got yourself a better quarterback because of it, you've really hedged against that bust, and you really didn't hurt yourself. Whereas if let's say you pivot off of Ingram and you go Rudolph and Zeke instead of Dak and Ingram, and Ingram has a good game and Johnson busts, and Rudolph has a poor game and Dak does well, and all that's reasonable, you've quadruple whammied yourself. You know what I mean? So there's the argument to be made to follow the chalk, which is again one of the reasons why I'm personally not jumping on the cash train this week, because I feel like you kind of have to be perfect. I feel like your hands are a little tied. Like we talked about it before the show started, and been talking about it the whole time we've been on the air here. You kind of have to play both Johnson and Ingram at their roster percentage this week. And I don't like the have to plays. Like I don't like when you have to do that, because it does because you got to be perfect everywhere else, because there's going to be one spot where you're going to be different. And if you're wrong, and that's the only spot where you're really different from everyone else, you've lost cash, even though you've nailed it down. We did that earlier this year. We were wrong by 6 points by using a Keenan Allen over CeeDee Lamb, even though we nailed every other top rostered player. But those 6 points, 8 points, whatever it was, cost us cash that week. And that was a lesson. That taught me maybe we don't need to chase cash if we're not feeling it. And that's not to say you all shouldn't be playing cash. If you like your lineup and that's how you build it, great. But I don't want to have to rely on that 1v1 or 2v2 versus the rest of the field, because it's really where we're headed, I think, this week for cash.
Yeah, and also too, I think you're at the point, because of the two free square running backs, it's going to be a week where 125 points is cashing, or you're putting up 165 and you're not sniffing the cash line.
Yeah, which I hate those weeks.
Which is way more variance than you want, but I still go of the belief that that you stick with cash. Like I'm still doing my normal routine just because.
Yeah, no, and there's something to be said for following that routine, right? We always say trust the process, don't come off it, yada yada, and I believe in that, and I do. But at some point too, one has to worry about their own personal mental well-being within the game. You know what I mean? And if I don't feel it, I'm just not going to force it. Have in the past, because listen, I think we're in agreement, right? I know we're kind of coming off our normal schedule of how we look at this, but I'm sort of building this lineup. Like this is how most cash games are going to start this week. Can we be in pretty strong agreement that even with the news of Ben Roethlisberger getting on the COVID list, I don't think that changes the Najee Harris love or his potential usage. And then if you're going to spend down at both running backs, you got to find somewhere else to spend up. And I think that's going to be with Adams. I think he'll be the most widely rostered receiver at the high end. Do we agree, like for the most part, this is where most cash lineups are going to start?
Oh, yeah, no question. No question.
So now, what have we done with the rest of our lineup? It kind of starts to play into itself. Let's say you go with your Dak Prescott, right? And we sort of talked about that. So you're going to have Dak Prescott at that spot, most people, right? He's going to be the most widely rostered quarterback this week. My guess is, therefore, at tight end, everyone will either have Dan Arnold or Tyler Conklin. On defense, they will either have Carolina or the Titans. And so where does that leave us? Essentially, it leaves us 2v2 with our last two wide receivers, though most likely, I don't want to say most likely because the ownership isn't there right now, but I mean, I feel a lot of people are going to end up hitting this direction too, right? And so you've got to hit that last wide receiver, and you've got to pick the right one of Arnold, one of the defenses, which hate having to rely on the defense to be right. Just kind of thrown out there where I think that's where cash heads this week. Yeah, are we kind of in agreement where most people we're going to head?
Well, I mean, from our standpoint, that's what we're looking at and liking. But I do think with the way that is, I don't think we're going to see a lot of Evans in cash this week.
Where do you think the other wide receiver ownership is going to go then?
So
it's got to come off Deontay at this point, right? I don't think people are going to be fired. Deontay was going to be chalky, but are people really going to stack Deontay and Najee?
I still think you're going to see a lot more Deontay than you think. I don't think either one gets super, super high, but I do think you can see 30 to 40% for each of them. I think they'll each be independent of each other. I don't think you'll see the stack, but I think they'll be independent of each other.
All right. So where do you think the Najee people are going, though? Where do you foresee the Najee people going for in cash?
So in that area, so if we're looking at where Evans is, I think you see a little more on Allen, and then I mean, it's a little tough. I mean, I guess it depends where people are spending. I don't think it's going to come in on Evans. I think you might see more of Michael Pittman as well.
I do like
in that range, and then they're kind of where that Jerry Jeudy area is. Maybe some Jeudy, maybe some Beasley in there as well. I mean, you could also see too. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if you see, like on the running back side, if they don't use both of the free square guys, if you see some spend down, it's just it's. I think you're going to see some weird configurations this week with how everything is. I mean, you could even see as well. I mean, you may not even see the spend down all the way at tight end. Like you could even see Freiermuth in there a little, a couple bucks above Arnold. And it wouldn't surprise me if you see a lot of Pitts in cash this week.
I think people will hit Pitts direction. I mean, right? You got to find a place to spend the money if you're saving, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think you will, because there's no other spend up options there, and even in cash, people tend to go that route. Like you'll see some spend up there. And all right, so where does that leaving you now with dollar wise?
36 if we're putting in Pitts, and let's say the Panthers, right? And Prescott at quarterback. 36 gives you James Washington, which I don't think people are going to stack in that respect. I think Tyler Johnson, maybe Westbrook, Akine, perhaps with Julio on IR, maybe. See this. I don't think this is where the build is going to come. I believe if this is the way it goes, and I do think I mean, the numbers are pointed out, right? I think you're going to be over 56% on both these guys. So I think the most common configuration will be Johnson, Ingram, Harris, and then even if they're going Pittman, so maybe they go with we'll even go out down to a little bit to like Fant, let's say, right? I think Fant is in such a good spot this week. I think his roster percentage is going to be super low. But I'm just putting him in at that mid-range price because I think people will look at him. I love him in tournaments this week. And then you're at I do think Gage could be popular this week at this 5K range because the 5K range is pretty weak. I know you like Donovan Peoples-Jones for tournaments, but I don't think he'll carry anything in cash. I do think Elijah Moore could be popular. The Jets are going to have to catch up. He's been getting a ton of targets. I think you could see something like this, perhaps in cash. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but again, that's where this scares me a little bit, because if everyone's going to have Johnson, Ingram, Adams, Najee, and a cheap defense, then and let's say Dak, like you're really limiting stuff where you've got to nail those three spots. Like you're not gaining anything by playing Adams and Harris. Like your two most expensive guys are not going to be the guys who are getting you where you need to be. And I feel like I feel like we've turned this into a play cash versus don't play cash like debate, which I don't want it to be. Like it's not that. Like I'm truly trying to figure out where these cash lines are going to be, and I think it's important to discuss the potential. At the end of the week when you're feeling really good because Adams hit for 30 and Najee hit for 30, and both your value running backs hit for 20, and you're like, wow, I'm sitting here with 100 points out of those 4 guys, but I'm barely cashing or I'm not cashing. Why? Because everyone's going to have those 4 guys, and so those guys doing well doesn't help you. And I think it's important to understand that so the expectations are not so high that it's like, oh man, I nailed those guys and I still did crap in cash. Well, yeah, because everyone had those 4 guys. Like that's
it's
common configuration this week. So what the hell are we going to do?
It's very. I mean, if my wait, keep that there. If my mind is working right, because I got a little bit of an update on ownership, and Connor's actually spiked up quite a bit, and Ingram has actually gone down about 35% from where he started. Which is interesting to see. So I'm wondering if maybe, instead of Ingram, if you've got Connor in there, and then let's say Dan Arnold at tight end.
See, I love Ingram. I love Connor this week. By the way, he was in the pool. He's one of the only other guys who's sitting in the pool. Like I love Connor this week.
Right. So I'm wondering if maybe even come off of Pittman, and will that fit like that Judy and Beasley area where you get 2 of those guys? Because that area on wide receiver in that price range, like below 6,000 and above 5,000, there's a handful of options that are going to be popular. I mean, Christian Kirk will probably get some ownership. I'm not crazy about it, but I get it because of all the injuries. Then you got Judy, Beasley, and Landry who are going to be wildly popular. So I think that might be a spot where people look in cash. If you keep Arnold in there, I mean, I think the Lions will see.
You think the Lions will be? You rather Arnold Lions than you think it'll be Arnold Lions rather than Conklin?
I think you'll see a lot of. I think you'll see a lot of Lions. I mean, I tend to see like 20 to 30% ownership on the cheapest defense, just because people just say, the defense is irrelevant. Even if I get a 0 from the defense, what do I care? I want the extra points elsewhere
from real players.
So I think this could, if that Ingram ownership comes down, this could be a route that you see people go as well, because you have you get the same kind of floor and upside with these guys.
Just want to see what happens with Pittman and if there's a viable route to go, because I do like Pittman better than the Beasley. I just think Buffalo scores the ball a ton, though. We saw last week what did Beasley have, like 4,000 receptions for 32 yards or something?
And that's like the Jets. The Jets have surprisingly been okay on the outside for whatever reason, and they've always been terrible against slot and tight end. But yeah, I mean, I'm all right with Harris or Gallup there. I mean, Gallup a little less.
I think Harris makes a ton of sense. Just the fact that he's been getting. I mean, he has 7 or more targets 3 of the last 4 weeks.
Yep.
Kamara's not going to be there, and I think Harris is going to get some of that spill off. And if you're not playing Ingram, and if part of the reason you're not playing Ingram is because you're not sure he'll be as involved with the passing game, I do think Harris gets a lot of those targets.
Yep.
And of course, if I'm playing Harris, and this is tournament strategy, if I'm playing Harris, I may want to pair him with the Saints defense.
It's not a bad idea.
You get that double up if he scores the touchdown on a punt return or a kick return. You guys run them both. But that's more tournament strategy. Like, this is a lineup I'd sort of tinkered around with a little bit. Oh, good. And I don't have to use the Lions defense. I'm just saying, for me personally, if I were using this, I would much rather use the Panthers. They are in the defense whisperer section this week. I do like them. I liked them before I thought Kyler Murray was going to be out. Now I like them even more. So I'm all about this. Like, I'm still not sure I'm going to roll cash, but if I was going to roll cash, I prefer not to play the double, and I do feel if I'm going to pick one of the 2 free squares, it's going to be Dearness Johnson this week. I think Dearness has a much better path towards a big week, just with the way that they run their offense. Plus, I mean, Cleveland is a better team than New Orleans right now. Trevor Siemian doesn't do it. You've of course got Taysom Hill who can come in and snipe targets, and you still got access to that short passing game from New Orleans with Deandre Harris in this lineup. Like, I could go to war with this lineup in cash and feel pretty comfortable, even though I'm not 100% on board with Dak Prescott this week. I could see myself in cash. I mean, I like Dak fine, but I prefer Brady, but I don't have the $700. So, at that price point, this is a very Jalen Hurtsy type of a play, even though he doesn't run as much. It's just a volume type play. I could be okay going to war with this lineup here. And you've got how many late game players? One late game player. Oh, I hate this, and it's the chalk guy. So there's late swap possibilities here. I hate when I only have one guy in the late window, but I think this makes some sense for cash. It's slightly terrifying still, just because if Ingram does go off and Johnson doesn't, and Ingram carries high ownership, but fading Connor was a thing I was scared of anyway in cash, because without Chase Edmonds, he looks like he's getting all the work, and he's just been a goal line beast anyway. He leads the NFL in touchdown rushes, and he's had them all. He didn't even have any the first 2 weeks, so he's had them all since week 3. Like, they've just loved to use him in that goal line area. Oh, it makes some sense. Maybe
it's pretty. It's pretty crazy when you see 10% of a guy's rushes have gone for touchdowns.
Yeah,
that's. It's unsustainable, but it's also too these things, like, you can see unsustainable things happen for a year, and it's the next year where it regresses. I mean, that's what happened in Lamar Jackson's MVP year. Like, I think he had something ridiculous, like 8.5% of his passes went for touchdowns.
His TDP rate was historic.
Yeah, it was like unsustainable, and the following year it fell down to like 5%. Like, it was kind of more league average, but that's what you see. So it's like yes, Connor is definitely due for touchdown regression, but that might come next year. Like, sometimes these things, it's just how it breaks, and it continues for a whole season.
And let's not forget too that Connor is going to see an increase in touches, like both in the passing game and the rushing game, because what's his face, Chase Edmonds isn't there. And, I don't think Benjamin's going to get all this work. So I think it makes some sense that Connor, I like Connor. I prefer him as a cash play going back to the pool. This all covers guys who are sitting in the pool. I know you're the guy and a Beasley guy. I know you don't mind both those guys. I didn't have them in my pool, but I can see.
Well, I'm not comfortable with Beasley in cash. I just mentioned it because of the way the lineup filled out and what ownership looks like, just kind of that educated guess on what the field may try to do with it to understand the builds.
So I feel like this is an avenue that works for cash, and I actually think in a roundabout way we've covered pretty much everyone in the pool. The only one we didn't really talk about here was Jamal Agnew or James Washington. Who I'm less in on James Washington than I was with Roethlisberger playing, though. They do have the whole college connection thing between Rudolph and Washington, and it is a pretty easy matchup. So I won't completely remove Washington from the cash pool, but I don't know if we have to go that far down, given the fact that you've got Dearness Johnson in there. We've got, obviously good punt options at tight end and defense this week.
Yeah,
all right, Gutta. You've talked me into a little bit where I think I could see myself loading up this lineup. Maybe I'll throw some money towards some cash lineups before all said and done. when in doubt, make more lineups, throw them in. And maybe instead of this being the smallest week I play, it'll end up being the biggest week I play all year. Just go all in. We'll see that balance go to 0 by the end of the week. We'll see what happens. Might as well. I can see this. I'm trying to talk myself into Dak Prescott. I got that $100 left over. If I wanted, could I go to anyone with that? No, I couldn't do Herbert. Couldn't do Brady.
No.
Couldn't do. I don't want to use Rodgers. And I think Rodgers. This could be one of those FU weeks.
Well, and I'm glad you're bringing it up, because this was going to be something I was going to touch on in GPPs. But that Seattle Green Bay game, right? They're two of the slowest paced teams in the league. But they have the talent that you can get into one of those spots where they score 4 touchdowns within a 7-minute stretch. And I'm not completely fading the game, because I do have exposure to all 3 of the receivers and Aaron Jones. It's just one of those weeks where I feel a little uneasy not having either a Rodgers or Wilson stack, because either one of those guys, and my guess would be it's a little more, I would say Russell Wilson's more likely to have that 4 touchdown game. But if that's just like one of those games where it's like it's Rodgers versus Wilson, and come 7:00, is it really going to surprise you that, one of those guys is down 35-28 and driving the ball with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter?
Nope. I have a lot of that game. That might be one of my more heavily closed games, honestly.
Yeah. Or it's a complete slop fest and it's 17-14 because both quarterbacks are rusty for, not having. I mean, Wilson's practiced this week, but he hasn't played in 5 weeks, and Rodgers hasn't practiced in a week and a half.
Couldn't you see Rodgers just putting up 5 touchdowns and after each one pretending to give himself a shot? Like I could just see him. Like that's so Aaron Rodgers. Like I could see him just getting in the camera and just screaming, "Seahawks, no shot, no shot!" Yeah. Like I could totally see it. Like it's so in his wheelhouse. Like agree or disagree with the guy. Like he's entertaining, and I could definitely see him pulling that. Like it's definitely well within his wheelhouse. So. I'm not gonna. I can't completely fade him for that reason alone. He's like Brady in that he will go full FU mode. And I gotta be here. All right, let's go. Let's do that point of the show where we ignore everything and look up some inactives because they are starting to release. Let's see. Damian Harris is officially inactive. Jonnu Smith is inactive this week. Oh, so that's good for Hunter
really?
Henry. That's a little interesting right there.
Huh? Yeah. Because Henry's had quite the touchdown equity. I mean, every time. I mean, he's sniped a bunch of touchdowns. Inside the 10, inside the 5. But I mean, I don't know. That's still a tough one. I mean, he's gotten 3, 3, 4, and 2 targets the last 4 games. I mean, before that he went 8, 5, and 6. I mean. If he's getting 5 to 6 targets, that's a very interesting play in the area where you've got the chalkiness of Freiermuth and Arnold.
Is Hunter Henry not playing for some reason? It said Devin Asiasi and Matt Lacoste get the nod at tight end, but doesn't Hunter Henry exist, or are we missing some news? No, he's fine. Okay,
I guess he's playing. I think they usually. I have a feeling they usually carry 3 tight ends on the active roster, so maybe that's just kind of like these are the other 2 we're carrying today.
Are we sleeping a little bit too much on Deandre Swift this week with Jamal Williams inactive again? I mean, the last time Jamal Williams was inactive, Swift didn't do anything. He crushed us against Philly. But are we a little low? Are we low on Deandre Swift? Is he a good option this week?
I think he is. I mean, the Philly game, I would say it was more of an outlier because of how it went. I don't remember exactly how it played out, but wasn't that one of those games where you looked up and Philly was up 28-0 already?
Yeah.
Wasn't it? So I think
he murdered them. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he still got 17 touches, but I think it was one of those games where they were just out of it, and it was like, all right, we're not going to get Swift hurt type of thing. So that's more kind of an outlier, I would definitely say. I think there might be a little more credence to Swift now because Roethlisberger is out. So if the Pittsburgh offense is not maybe going to be as strong with Rudolph in there, you could say maybe that's going to give Swift a couple extra touches even.
Maybe.
But I mean, Pittsburgh's been relatively good against the run, so that's the other hard part there as well. What do you want to take into it? Do you want to because initially I would say with Roethlisberger in there, your narrative was, well, Swift's going to get, 8 checkdowns at least.
And now it might not be as much running.
Yeah, and 10 to 15. But now is it, all right, now Swift, you can maybe pencil in for 13 to 17 carries and maybe only 4 to 6 targets. I'd rather have the reverse. I'd rather have more targets and less running attempts. Sure. But again, he's in a range as well where he's a little overlooked, and people are going to find the $200 to go up to Zeke, or they're going to spend down to Patterson, or even go down the $500 to Connor and use the money elsewhere. It's in that range where there's options that people would prefer over him.
A couple other actives and inactives to bring up. The Mac is inactive again, which is freaking great for Jonathan
Good for Taylor. Yep.
For Nyheim Hines. James Robinson active, but Meyer has already said that you're going to see a lot of Carlos Hyde, screw Urban Meyer. He's terrible. Ramondre Stevenson is active and should get the start, though I'm not going to use him. I think Brandon Bolden is more guy for PPR.
And also,
Jalen is officially active.
And JJ Taylor is supposed to be active as well. So
Yes, JJ Taylor is active.
yeah. So right, you can kind of see. I mean, Stevenson has a chance, but they've been so comfortable using Bolden, and also too. I mean, let's also take the part that wouldn't it just scream Belichick with Harris out that all three of those running backs get like 7 touches, and it's just maddening. Just drives you nuts. Just drives you nuts.
Zach Moss active, though I'll still use Singletary this week. Not over Moss, but I mean more season-long type stuff. But personally, because I have to use him.
So
they're saying it's a late game, but Cam Newton is expected to be active today, but not necessarily start. Good freaking luck with that. I think that helps. I honestly think that helps McCaffrey having Newton if he plays at all. Curtis Samuel inactive again, of course.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget when Newton was the full-time quarterback there in 2018. That McCaffrey had 124 targets that year, and even 2017. McCaffrey wasn't like the full-time running back, you can say, but he still had 113 targets his rookie season. So Cam was not afraid to chuck it to McCaffrey, and I mean, I think we see a lot of McCaffrey because Matt Rule is just desperate to keep his job at this point. And I think, if you see Walker struggle early on, I don't think they have any hesitation going to Cam in hopes that they can maybe pull this one out.
I agree. I sniped Cam in a 2-quarterback league, so I'm very excited that I'm not starting him or anything, but I have him as a nice little backup. Very happy there. Let's see what else happened. Apparently, Jonnu Smith was potentially slated to play some running back today, and now he's inactive, which is really weird. But again, that's just more credence to not playing Patriots running backs unless you have to, which unfortunately I do in multiple leagues. I have to play Brandon Bolden, including a non-PPR league because I hate life, so I'm stuck playing Bolden there.
Yeah,
it's pretty terrible.
Yeah, I picked up Bolden as insurance to Zach Moss, but thankfully Moss is active. So,
which reminds me, I have, the Warrior Bowl. I have to go put Zach Moss into my lineup instead of Devin Singletary. What a crazy week! It's a wonky week, dude. Like I am not in love with this week. This week is very sad. All right, so I think we're good with the inactives. So talk to me about tournaments. Like you're the tournament guru for us. Where's the chalk coming from this week in tournaments? And then how the hell do we get off the chalk this week? Like where's our smart play?
So, well, if you want to look at, so let's start individual players first, because I think knowing the chalk individual guys is a little more important than the chalk stacks, because the chalk stacks are easy enough to differentiate yourself just by your bringbacks or just extending the stack. We've talked about this for all season long, so I think we have at least grasp on that. But from the individual side, I mean, at running back, obviously, we know the top 3 guys, right? We know Johnson, Harris, Ingram. Connor's actually crept it up above 20%, which I kind of anticipated, so I'm not too surprised. But it's interesting how much he's creeping up there. Jonathan Taylor is going to be wildly popular, which I did write about, and I've got no exposure to Taylor this week. It worries me a little bit, but at the same token, I mean, the guy is just not catching that many passes. Maybe he'll get 2 to 3 catches, and he can definitely break a long one like we saw against Baltimore a few weeks back. So the talent is there on that, but he's just not getting the targets, and even his rushes, he's pretty much capped every week at like in that 16 to 18 range. So you're really looking at Taylor as kind of a cheaper version of Derrick Henry. And what you're looking at there, I mean, last week, no, but I mean, Henry's pretty much consistently been over 9K. So that's kind of why I bring it there. But to the same token, I mean, you need what he did last week against the Jets to be his output this week. So you need 172 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 catches for 28 yards. That got him 34 points last week. That puts you at just over 4x. And even that, at 8,100, that's like your baseline of what you need. Unless this is that week where every single game goes under and you have Taylor and he gets you 28 points, yeah, maybe that's helping you win a GPP because every game is going under. But short of that happening, you really need what Taylor did last week to occur to really help you. So that's kind of the main reason I'm fading him. And also too, let me see if I can find it. I think exactly what it is. The Jaguars have given up 5 rushing touchdowns on the year, right? No, sorry.
They've been really good against running backs this year. I wrote about that in the article this week. And my fun fact, no team over the last 4 weeks has allowed fewer fantasy opposing running backs than the Jaguars.
Yeah, and
no team has been better against the run. Not Tampa, not anybody.
Yep, and they've allowed 8 rushing touchdowns this year, and 3 of them came to Derrick Henry in one game. So, I mean, yes, they can be beat, but I think they've been beat less by the running backs because of how bad their secondary is, and they've been passed all over.
I have way too much this week.
Yeah, so so that's kind of where you are with the top 5 running backs, and everybody below it. Nobody actually has ownership that I'm worried about. Like Zeke is coming in at 14%, but I'm not worried about playing him because if he's under 15%, you're not really worried about that ownership level kind of killing you. And then, I mentioned it yesterday. When I did my article update, I didn't really know what to make of Fournette and where everything was going. But Fournette's ownership continues coming down. He's now down to like 8.5%. I think that gives a little more ability to playing him and giving a little leverage off of the Tampa passing game. But even that, I mean, Tampa's passing game right now, it's not going to be that highly owned. I mean, Evans and Godwin are both going to come in like between 11 and 13%. That's not too crazy. Your wide receivers are kind of much more spread out, and you're seeing double-digit ownership on like everybody that's above 6,800, and surprise, surprise, because we got those 2 cheap running backs there.
We talked about it this morning before we went on the air, right? That the best way to go contrarian this week is just start here and kind of roll from there, right? Like,
yep, that's one way to look at it, and
pretty contrarian, right?
Yep. And the other way also is instead of your spend down being, those running backs, your spend down is going to be the value wide receivers. And
there's your preference there.
Well, if I'm in
spend down.
So I'll give you two different tiers. So if we're in the 5,000 to 4,000 range, I think the guys there that make the most sense are probably you're looking at Russell Gage, but I think Gage makes more sense in a stack than as a one-off. The one-offs, I like Peoples Jones a lot because he's got some big playability, but he's more talented than just the shot put type of guy.
And you can throw on New England this year. New England has been able to be thrown on this year. Like, they're not the same defense they used to be.
No, they're much better. They've been run on lately, but they're a little bit better against the run than the pass. But you can pass on them. I like Jacoby Myers in this spot this week. Cleveland's a little susceptible over the middle of the field, and then there's no one really in that middle area. When you hit 4,000, I mean Gallup.
I feel like didn't you write up T.Y. Hilton a little bit? Didn't you some sort of birthday baby? Carson Wentz
it's T.Y. Hilton's there. I mean, again, I think Hilton is just like if you're stacking Indy, Hilton's like your number 2 option there. I would not use Hilton as a one-off. I think if Hilton's doing anything, Wentz is having a big game, so I would use it there. But yeah, I mean, maybe right
for the 3 plays. He'll be great for the 3 plays he'll play before he gets injured. It'll be wonderful.
Yeah, well, that too. And then more on that one-off area. I think this is kind of where I've been living. It's that Gallup, Deandre Harris, Taj Sharp area. Gallup, obviously, if that's a shootout, he'll get some. Deandre Harris, as we touched on, 7+ targets in 3 or 4 games. The one game that he didn't get it, he scored that 72-yard touchdown against Washington, and he got hurt. So he probably would have gotten at least 5 to 6 targets there. And he may have had a blow-up game, and he's priced at 5,000, not 4,000. So he's got some potential there. And Taj Sharp, Sharp is kind of like their de facto number 2 wide receiver now. He only saw 1 target last week, but he was on the field for 92% of the snaps. So he's out there. And the Cowboys secondary, let me find the exact number because it's actually pretty mind-blowing. Where did I write it? Let's see. I know we got it somewhere. Oh, yeah, here we go. So the Cowboys' top 2 corners have allowed 1.83 and 1.65 yards per route covered, which is 4th worst and 8th worst in the NFL. So there's definitely they can be beat on the outside. Now they do sell out for interceptions and stuff, which is why they've made a lot of big plays this year. But if they're not making the big play, and we've seen it, the past couple of weeks, they get beat. And Taj Sharp can definitely stretch the field. Gage can stretch the field. So I think there's a lot of viability there. And if you're getting a guy in a shootout that's going to be on the field at least 85-90% of the snaps, I think Sharp could be good for anywhere from 4 to even 8 targets, depending.
You're not worried about Zacchaeus this week?
No, because Zacchaeus was only on the field. I think he saw like 40% of the snaps last week. And again, he got 3 targets. 2 of them happened to go for touchdowns. That was more of a fluke thing than anything else, I would argue. So that's really where I'm differentiating myself. I'm willing to pay down at receiver, pay up at running back, and kind of go the opposite of where other people are going. And
are you in on Tyler Johnson at all?
I am. That was going to be my last guy to touch on because he's the ultimate punt receiver.
Right.
There's no Antonio Brown. Scotty Miller didn't get activated. So right there, the 4th receiver is Brashad Perryman. Brashad Perryman is not playing. So you're Godwin, you're Evans, and you're Johnson. Brayton Howard will probably get a couple of targets here or there randomly mixed in, but neither one of them are viable. They're a mess. So really, you've got 3 targets for Brady in this game, not counting the passes to the running backs that'll get mixed in.
And the Malik Turner thing last week, you're not buying into any extra playing time, right? That was all garbage time for you.
No, that was garbage time, fluke for whatever reason. He was either in there with Cedric Wilson or over Cedric Wilson, but with Gallup back, I don't think there's anything there. And I think with
off on MVS, I'm sorry, I know I just firing at you too much, but you mentioned
the
article MVS, but you're kind of off MVS this week.
Yeah, I'm not. I think MVS being healthy is actually a benefit for Devontae Adams because Scantling can legitimately stretch the field, and it just gives the defense someone else just to really eye and key on. Again, if you're stacking Aaron Rodgers, I wouldn't say no to Adams and Scantling there just because he's got the ability for that 70-yard touchdown. If he gets 3 or 4 grabs and he gets that 70-yard touchdown, yeah, you're really cooking there. But he can also see 2 targets and do absolutely nothing, which is why I'd rather go the other guys, just because I think there's more target upside, which gives us more potential. And just back to Tyler Johnson real quick too, with Godwin sort of being banged up and maybe not a true full go, you could see some of those targets funnel off to Johnson. And also too, if it's a game where it's 35-7 and Tampa's still passing a bit, it's going to be Tyler Johnson out there. Godwin will not be out there if they're blowing him out. I don't think they would risk it. And maybe Perriman's out there over Evans, and they just say we got enough injuries that we're dealing with, and Johnson gets a couple of garbage time funnels. That's you got a possibility there as well.
How do we feel about the who's filling in for Julio Jones? Is it going to be Westbrook? Is it going to be Rodgers? Is there someone else I'm missing? Does it even matter at this point? Are we just going all AJ Brown?
No, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
We're just going AJ Brown at this point, right?
Oh God, AJ Brown's going to have like Derrick Henry volume. It's going to be silly. I was I didn't really watch the Tennessee Rams game last week, but when I was doing my early week like recap and looking through everything, and I saw that AJ Brown had like 83% of the air yards. I was like, holy crap, Brown must have had a monster game. And I looked at the numbers and I saw 5 for 42. I was like, that's interesting. I mean, the 11 targets make sense, but Tannehill didn't throw for a lot. It was a weird game. But
we got Ramsey too, you know, he's facing Jalen Ramsey, so that doesn't help.
Yeah, but the fact that Brown had that high of the air yard share, I was just like, well, there's we know where they're leaning, we know what they're doing, we know where they're going. I mean, and New Orleans has been bad against the receivers. Yeah, maybe there's a little concern on Marshawn Lattimore, but one thing that I read was that the last 2 weeks, AJ Brown has run 40% of his routes out of the slot, which if he's doing that, the Saints are running out their backup slot cornerback. So if and Lattimore. Yeah, and Lattimore does not move around the field. He will not go into the slot. So if Brown's avoiding him, there's definitely a path there. And again, Tennessee, they're not going to be able to run the ball. It's just not happening against New Orleans. Brown becomes a very interesting pivot off of Devontae Adams.
Is he the best spend up guy in terms of tournaments? Let's say sub 10%, or for Jefferson, McLaurin, all three of those guys are projected to be under 10%. Like, which is Brown the guy at this point? Like, I like all three of them in general, but I find I've got a lot more AJ Brown than almost anybody at wide receiver this week.
I think as the one-off, Brown is the smarter play. Sure. I like Jefferson better, but I don't see a big game from Jefferson without the Chargers having a big game.
Yeah. Well, because I think never one off people. Like, I'm always running AJ Brown with Ingram on the other side. So if I were to run Jefferson, the very least run Jared Cook on the other side, although I would try to find a way to get Mike Williams in there.
Although
$6,600 is stupid for Williams.
I do think that AJ Brown can have a big game and Ingram fails. Like, I don't think I think that can be independent. Like, if I'm using Ingram, the only stack I'm doing with Ingram is the Saints defense. Because if Ingram is really going off for you, there's a very, very strong chance the Saints defense is having a very strong game.
Gotcha. So you think Ingram will get most of his production from the running game? You don't think he's going to be as involved in the passing game?
I mean, he'll be involved in the passing game. I mean, there's definitely, there's easily a route for 4 to 6 catches. There's no doubt about that. But I also don't think you'll see Ingram with 4 catches and it'll be 75 receiving yards. Like, it's 4 catches for 35 to 40 yards.
Cole Beasley.
Cole Beasley. Yeah, exactly. Which, most running backs are like that. Like, there's not many Alvin Kamaras out there where he can have 3 catches and go for 120 yards.
Yeah. Jonathan Taylor, baby, he did it a few weeks ago. That's my boy.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is your favorite game? What's your favorite stack with run back that you're running out in tournaments this week? Where's your, like, where are you planting your flag this week in terms of, like,
it's Dallas, Atlanta, and it's Minnesota and the Chargers.
I feel like they'll be fairly chalky, which is definitely not an issue. But how are you fighting the chalk on that? Or are you just playing smaller field tournaments where the chalk doesn't really matter?
It's a combination. I mean, I tend to find myself more on the other parts of the lineup, try to get the contrarian end as opposed to necessarily the stack. But there are options, like the Dallas game. There's actually not a lot of correlation to Lamb and Cooper both having big games that you say, well, you stack Dak with those two. So I'm looking at it kind of as an either or with either Lamb or Cooper, and then using Schultz or using Gallup and just getting the savings, because Gallup can kind of be, like I talk about with the tight ends, where they can be game flow or kind of going off agnostic, where Gallup could do, I mean, obviously in this scenario, if Gallup does well but the game fails, I mean, it's irrelevant anyway for your lineup. But Gallup could do well without a touchdown. And I also think Gallup doing well is going to hurt Zeke more than it would hurt Lamb or Cooper. So it can kind of be, because you can see Gallup with 80 yards and 5 catches, and it doesn't really negatively affect the other wide receivers. So you're hoping Gallup's, if he does well, it's hurting Cooper and not hurting the Lamb type of thing. So I think that makes sense there. And I also think Schultz, because I think Schultz can do well without a touchdown also. And then from there, on the Atlanta side for me, I've narrowed it mostly to Patterson and Sharp. I wrote Gage up. I like Gage, but where my lineups have built, Patterson or Sharp make the most sense to me.
So I'm just building this out a little bit here. Would you use both of them, or would you do a double run back, or are you only doing single run back?
I do have one double run back. I did do that because again, because of Sharp's value, he can do well without the touchdowns. So it can kind of go.
Just sort of building it out, because I know you like Aaron Jones is sort of a contrarian play, and then maybe run it back there with Lockett. And that gives you plenty of money for a tight end. Oh, look, you could actually run it back with Pitts, which I know you don't love in this matchup.
Now you got 3 Atlanta guys. Now you got 3 Atlanta guys.
Well, yeah. Well, I was going to Patterson.
Oh, okay.
Back, but
you
can just go in with Hawk as a tight end there. And I mean, that's a pretty contrarian lineup. Hawk's going to be under 5 this week.
Yep.
Jones will be pretty low, and then you run it back with Lockett, or you could run it back with Metcalf instead of Lockett, and then you don't use Hawk. You've got we'll see who we can use here. It's not too much different. I think they're similarly priced. And then your tight end, you can run. No, you can still run Hawk. So you could totally do that. You run either Seattle guy, and that to me, right? And that's where you get your. This is where you get your contrarian by going Gallup and Sharp, because I don't think they'll be widely rostered. Patterson and Lamb will be pretty high owned. You got Jones, which will be low. Metcalf and Hawk will be low. And if that's you don't need Seattle Green Bay to go bananas for that to work. Jones gets they could run a slower pace. Jones has one of his 3 touchdown kind of games, and Metcalf 6 for 100 and a touchdown there. That's fine at that price. And so this is a fairly well correlated lineup. Oh, Daddy likes this. Every time we do this, man, I'm like, time to spend more money. So this is what I want to do.
So take out. I want to see how you build this one. So take out Jones, Hockenson, and Metcalf. Put McCaffrey in at running back, and I want to see what you come up with.
All right, let's do that. Well, if I run McCaffrey there's holy crap, there's a ton of money left there. If that's the case, then I want some more later game exposure. Maybe around Conklin here, and that gives me 74 in the flex. You know what else I could do here? Okay, yep, that's what we can do here. You pop this up, you run your flex. I think we can go a little chalky here because we've got McCaffrey. You go chalky with Devontae Adams here. And we've got the money because I do think that Ryan Griffin is going to get some play for the Jets today, and that's probably how I'll go Adams big time there. I think that works. Damn, that looks really good too.
But you see, and this is more to my point now of where I've been built. I didn't come up with this lineup because I didn't have Griffin in consideration until we spoke this morning. But this has been more to my point of, you can spend down and spend up, but the opposite way of what the field is going to be doing, and still feel very comfortable about it. Because if we did the reverse and we were spending down on Ingram and Dearness Johnson, and at those receiver spots, paying up, you'd still feel really good about it, but you're getting more chalky and you're doing basically what the field is doing. Now you're doing the same thing, but the opposite way of what the field is doing, which from a tournament standpoint is what you want with a chunk of your lineups. Because if the idea works, but it works in the reverse way, well, you've got it.
Don't mind me. I'm just finding a place to put this lineup. It's 12 o'clock. It's perfect timing to call it a day on this anyway, because this is good. I like that. Before I do log us out, I do like to ask this every single week. Gutta, can you please tell me at the end of the day which stack is going to make us go, kind of wish I played that?
Mike White, duh.
Oh God! And we almost
No,
made it through without
no.
a Jets reference. I hate
No,
myself for even bringing
let's
that up.
see. The stack that we say we should have played and why didn't we? Buffalo.
Yeah, I got quite a bit of Buffalo today because
Definitely Buffalo, but the problem is their offense is there's too many weapons on the offense. It's like, there's legitimately, how do you figure out Diggs, Beasley, Sanders, and Knox at the right combination? That's real. And because you always have the X factor that they get with inside the 5, and Josh Allen runs it in also. Yeah. So maybe
the way I'm playing Buffalo today, Beasley, Sanders.
Yeah, Diggs.
I'm avoiding Knox, and I'm going Beasley, Sanders, and I don't know if that's the right way to do it. But it's the way that I'm doing it.
I did one Buffalo lineup just because of that, and I'm only doing Allen and Beasley. I'm actually making it skinny, and I'm not even touching Diggs. I'm going under that hope that Allen gets a rushing touchdown, and his three passing touchdowns are going to be spread out, and Beasley can get you there without the touchdown. And if he scores, it's just that much more.
It's gravy, yeah. This has been an expensive live stream because I keep putting lineups in. I put like 3 or 4 lineups in as we were live streaming, but I love it. I like that last lineup that we built. That was fantastic. All right, folks, that is it for the show today. More lasers, music, fireworks, Brock Lesnar, exit entrance, all that good stuff. Great stuff. This is BanksterDFS.com. That's hilarious. BanksterDFS.com, $3.99 per week. It is a fantasy sports community for the casual player, but it's not all casual. Sean Goodwin last night, one of our writers, he's posted it now in Slack, so it's okay to put it out there. Pop for $20,000 on a $15 hockey entry.
Yeah.
Really big time there. So it's not our first $20,000 win, and it won't be our last $20,000 win. So come check us out, BanksterDFS.com. We cover every sport. We have our Slack. Everything's wonderful. Gutta's got family in town. See you next week, Gutta. I'll talk to you in Slack
later.
Take care. Peace.
Yes.
Bye, everyone.
Good luck today.
Week.